Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for attending the School Building Committee Finance Subcommittee. We'll call the meeting to order at 5:30. I apologize for the time confusion. So I was going to have it for 5, but she made it 5:30, so I hope everyone understood that. And thank you for all our Zoom members as well. So item 1, call to order, which we just did. Our first agenda item is what we need to report on to the School Building Committee, the expenditures report. And we have extra copies for everyone on the committee when they come for the regular meeting at 5:30. So
I'll be happy to go over this. So our business manager sent us the latest and greatest report this afternoon, and you'll see of our $200,000, we have been expended already, so paid out $49,812.86. We've encumbered $91,545.68. So we have available to spend $58,641.46. So the transaction detail, you can see.
Hold on 1 second, Arvin.
Yeah.
Just so
that's at the top.
Just to be clear, that's the first 100,000.
No, this is our $200,000 budget. All of those numbers will equal $200,000. We have only paid out just over almost 50,000. We've encumbered 91.
So 49, 58, 91 all equal to the 100,000. Okay.
Yes.
I'm with you. Go ahead.
So we have 58,000 some change. So the top half of your detail are the actual expenses, what has been paid to date and who it's been paid to. So you can see Dr. Peter Prouda, the majority of them are to Colliers, Eagle Environmental, and Halloran and Sage, and then the property valuation on the private site. On the bottom is an encumbrance. So just so you're aware, as a matter of process, when we leave a meeting and we have voted to spend or encumber funds within our budget, I communicate with the business manager so that she can properly document on the financial reports so that we know how much money we have available to spend. So this is an up-to-date amount.
So that's how the 10,000 got in there for the legal services.
That is correct. So
that the last meeting. Everything
that was approved goes to her so they can document. So you can see we have 91,000 encumbered. So hasn't actually gone out the door. The money is still here. And that includes the remainder of our contract to Colliers.
Which is a given.
It's a given, it's encumbered.
Right.
But the remainder of their contract, the phase 2 that we approved on November 16th, we still have some legal expenses. And as we go through, if we determine that the work for that particular encumbrance is cleared up, then we'll clear the encumbrance and make it available monies.
Right. That's the only one, Erica, to me that was like we just said, as a pot for legal services.
So we did the 10,000.
That's not truly encumbered, we're just anticipating
it's encumbered, meaning we budgeted 10,000 to set aside just for that. So it's encumbered for legal services.
So it can only be spent on
legal.
It doesn't seem as encumbered as much to me as, say, the environmental studies, which we know we're doing.
But it's encumbered, Peter, in the sense that it's not available dollars to allocate to another project unless we make a change in it. So we've said we budgeted $10,000 and we can't use it for something else. And then we, if you recall, we did $1,600 for mailers and other print services. So we need some papers in-house.
Where's
that? Down at the bottom, you'll see there's requisitions for CCM, the postmaster, Tallinn, Willington
postmaster. It all adds up to 1,600.
So,
gotcha. Okay.
So we have, I'll just let you know, one mailer has already gone out. The invoice hasn't been paid because we just got it yesterday and we won't do bills again, but the mailer we've already done, and we've actually paid because we use the credit card to pay for the post office items. So the next time we get detail, these will move from an encumbered into the expended column. It just happened. And then the last.
Only one of those, right?
Only one of those. So half of the CCM and half of the postmaster ones will be allocated or have already been spent. And the QA&M, again, we put in a PO for $19,500 for those conceptual plans. So again, we know specifically what they're for, and the monies are tied up, so otherwise spoken for. So tonight when the, if the board determines we need something additional, we know we have 58,641 for pre-referendum spending. And I would caution us in what we spend moving forward to make sure it's something that's pre-referendum wouldn't be included in a project that could then be reimbursable. And I think Scott can help us determine that if the question came forward. So we're still in good shape. I think in my estimation, Peter, the only thing that would potentially remain and could be adjusted is the legal expense, right? We may not need, and I'm specifically looking at the Halloran and Sage draft letter of intent and title search. We had approved $4,000. We still have 2618. I'll be looking for some clarification as to whether or not that particular very specific project is completed and the billing's complete, in which case I'd say let's clear that encumbrance and put it back into available funds, because we do have a $10,000 set aside. I don't think we need to leave that 2,000 if all of the billing and all of the work on the title search and the letter of intent are complete. So that's a question that I will pose to either Catherine or to ask the attorney. So that is the expenditures report.
The only thing I was thinking about as I was looking at all this, just kind of scanning through them on the known encumbrances that we've already paid. The property valuation is 4 from the bottom for $3,000. I remember at our last SBC meeting, we said we would need a second one.
Yeah, the second one has to be.
Is that going to be about the same amount of money? Do we know?
I think it depends on the vendor. I would guess to say it's probably going to be in the ballpark, right? We don't have a vendor, so we couldn't say for sure. But it has to
do it by law, right?
No, we have to do it per the grant. So to qualify for the funding for the grant.
Post-referendum?
And that's a question we should ask Scott tonight. And he doesn't. It has to be within. We're going to need 2 more, because correct me and Phil's
It
here.
has to be within 6 months.
The 2 have to be within 6 months of the grant application.
Oh, okay.
So the grant application is in June. By June 30, I would say.
All right. So this is post-referendum.
No. Yes, maybe not. I would say it's post January 1st. I don't know the answer to that. I want to say yes, but I don't know for sure.
The reason I brought it up is because people were asking us, as I remember from the public, about this valuation. And I know we had one, and I know we're supposed to get a second. So, like, could someone say we're not accounting for it? Is the question I was.
I think our due diligence is asking Scott if the remember we talked about the second one is a second evaluation. The second one, the second opinion. We're going to need an updated from the first one we did, so that the 2 separate evaluations are in that 6-month window. And so we're going to ask this vendor to give us an update so that it falls into. So it may not cost as much as the initial. Is my guess.
The same guy or a different one?
Yes, because we have to have 2 within 6 months of the grant.
It doesn't have to be a different appraiser?
2 separate have to be 2 different appraisers.
Oh, okay.
But we've already had an appraiser do it. So we'd ask that same appraiser
to do it
to give us an update, an updated
6-month
an updated appraisal that fits in the time window. And I would think that it would cost less money.
Okay.
We talked about that a little bit.
If he did it the first time, correct. He did all this basically. Okay.
I would think so. Okay. My guess is, we would probably need.
Because people asked us this, I remember at one of our meetings from the public, and I'm like, okay, all right, okay.
Right. And so that's some of why we've held off on a second one. The first was to give us the committee some idea as they move forward with securing a site, if you will.
Okay. That was my only question of all the items. We're encumbered up to 140,000. We have like $60,000 balance, so it seems like we're in a positive situation. Justin, do you agree? I think so.
At this point, yeah. I don't know how much more needs to be done
pre-referendum. That's a good question, actually, Justin.
That'd be a
for that $10,000 legal pot, as I'm calling it. Is there anything on the horizon that Phil sees or Scott sees for legal costs?
Well, I would say that will carry us post referendum too, right? Because most of those aren't in there. Those legal fees are not in the project cost.
Understood.
Those are born separate. And that's why we put aside that money. So there may not be something today, but there will be potentially in the future. Like I can tell you, I've been working with the town attorney as we outline the process to get to referendum. So there are fees there. When we have bond counsel. There are fees associated with that. So we've put some legal aside for the process, the project that's not included in the project cost that will go to referendum. That does not include our legal expenses. Those are separate for the town. So
okay.
Although I don't believe we have anything pending on a legal standpoint. There will be items that will come forward.
I'm sure.
So
sure.
I'm going to make a note for the meeting. We want to ask Scott if the appraisals.
Yeah, I wrote Scott next to that number too.
Are pre
for the meeting
or post referendum.
Okay.
Are they reimbursable? Which I don't think they are. And if they're not reimbursable, it may not matter as long as they're after, I would say January 1. That fits into the 6-month time frame.
Okay. Justin, you're good.
I'm good.
Anything else we need to know about this, Phil? It's pretty straightforward to me. Okay, great. That means we can move to our next agenda item, which is the project. I just call it a project cost on the agenda, but that is the bonding cost for the project.
So I'll
Should I be calling it something else?
No, we're discussing project costs.
Okay.
I'll just share a little bit of the documents you have in front of you. So you have a very colorful packet like this that has lots of teeny tiny little numbers. This is the work that came to us from our financial advisor that Phil, myself, and our business manager went over with her, that was helping us to understand the cost implications of a bond. And so you'll see multiple columns because we have an option whether or not we take a bond with level principal or level debt service. The recommendation from our business manager is level principal. Okay, so you'll see it broken out on this first page. For every project, there's level principal and level debt. So I would say the first item.
So each column is a comparison of the two.
But the first column is that project. You'll see the option listed underneath. The first one is option 1, which is scenario 1, and it's level principal. So we'll only be looking at the numbers level principal. That is the recommendation from and up to us to decide. But that is the recommendation from our business manager, which would be to go with level principal. But it's certainly going to be the town's choice. And we asked for, these were based on a 30-year bond. We also went back to her and asked her to provide us with what it would look like in a 20-year bond. And that is scenario 9. So the next to last page, it looks like this. Just before this big table where your thumb is. Yes, this is based on a 20-year bond. So for comparison's sake, and we only had to run this for option 1, just so that we can see what a 20-year versus a 30-year looked like. So for comparison's sake, you can take the first column on your first page. That is the annual bond payment on a 30-year bond with level principal. And that last page is the proposed debt cost with a 20-year bond. And what the biggest difference you'll see is the total cost of the project. So again, I'm just using option 1 for discussion. The amount we would bond on that option would be $28,700,000. The interest is $26,836,223. So you're spending almost an interest as you are in bond to go out. It is when you looked at 30-year. So then we asked the question, can we do a 30-year bond? So in that meeting, and if they'll correct me if I'm wrong, in that meeting, Scott had said he just wasn't aware of many towns that had done
Seems
a 30-year
unusual,
bond.
my
Now I
reaction.
can see why. So we reached out to the state. And
What did
I
say?
don't believe they answered back. They were going to pose that question to DAS. But I can see why people would go with a 20-year bond because you're doubling
Your interest.
the cost of the project with your interest. So it is a staggering number for sure. So instead of 26,836,000 with a 20-year bond, it would be 17,205,000.
Where is that?
So here at the top here, you can see now flip this page. Right here, you can see. This
Oh,
is
I was in the wrong
interest.
place. Okay, I'm gonna have to go way down here.
Yeah.
And 20. Oh,
So you
17.
can see that these are the notes, their notes, and then the final bond. So again, this is based
Oh, the
upon,
3 notes and then the.
this is based upon
is that the
3
first
notes.
bond?
This is
note,
note,
and then bond. Okay.
right. So this analysis that was given to us is based on 3 notes and a bond. And the notes and the amount of the note followed the funds that were needed in the project. So Scott worked with them to provide that amount. So there's a chart of what we would need in what time frame, and that's how she worked up the notes. First a $2.5 million note, a $10 million note, a $31 million note, and then the bond. So it is certainly the choice of the town how we would want to do that. Do we want to do one big note? And then you can only do a note for as many as 3 years.
So this is one big bond.
This is 3
notes and one
small,
bond.
right, bond anticipation
one
notes
bond?
and then one bond. We'd only do one bond. We're only bonding one.
Why is there a bond? Oh, but it's spread out over 3 years.
Nope, so there's 3 notes and
3
then a
notes.
bond. You mean in here? Phil just only ran the projection costs in 3 years of the bond and then they go down. You have every year of the bond here.
That's really just one bond. Okay.
Right.
I understand.
So this is based upon the assumptions are that we did 3 notes, a 2.5 million, a 10 million, and a $31 million note, and then 1 bond. We also, you had to put in some assumptions to get these numbers. And again, these are not concrete numbers because we have not determined the exact project and the final cost, but these
just
are.
stop for a minute.
Yes.
So I can adjust this. So what we're looking at right now as possibly favorable, or more, I should say more favorable, is this option 1. Oh wait, but this is with the waiver.
So it's really, if
Should we be
our,
looking at the worst case scenario?
if our cost
Where is-
was $28,700,000,
Without waiver. Okay,
we just chose one option and had to run it on one option.
Oh, we haven't
afterwards.
run all of them yet? Oh,
We
shoot.
did not, but I don't know that
A lot of
we
work for
need
these
to.
guys.
Yes,
Okay, well.
but it gives you a sense of, we wanna
The
go with
savings on
20
interest,
million or
I
$30
agree,
million
but I just, hang on, Eric.
Mhm.
I think it's really important, Erica and Justin, that we be looking at always the worst case scenarios. I think Phil and Scott have emphasized that whatever we bring for referendum, yeah, we know we might get a waiver down the road, but we want, can we get that calculation for this more favorable interest?
Well, we didn't ask her to run every single individual scenario, but you can see in the first page that she ran a $28,700,000 bond, a $43,400,000 bond, a $36,075,000 bond, and a $49,675,000 bond. So I think in our worst case scenarios, the $49,675,000 cost to the town
Where's that?
was our worst case scenario, right across the top of the first page, Peter. Here are your
Oh,
scenarios.
oh,
and here are your costs.
so you're saying that the no waiver.
So the third box from the right, option 2A with level principal, is your worst case scenario.
How do you know that? You just know? Okay.
Yes, a little bit my job.
Okay. And in that situation, we would be bonding 49,675,000.
Mhm.
You with me, Justin?
Mhm.
Okay, good. I'm slow. And our interest seems really high.
Well, because this is a 30, again.
Oh,
a
it's not
30-year
20.
note.
So it's not
Right.
like, it's not like
Nope.
this.
Nope, she only, after
Oh,
we
shoot,
ran
this is-
everything.
So I'm
We ran
comparing apples and
everything-
oranges.
We ran everything on a 30-year note that was, Phil, correct me, we did that based on the recommendation of this manager, correct? To start,
Yeah, I think the thought
Why
was
is
it was
anyone
gonna be
listening?
cheaper.
right, that was our thought, was it? That's expensive. When we see this, and the first thing that stuck out to me is every option is, we're paying almost the same cost in interest
Right.
as we are
It's,
in principal. And
so if we go back to this scenario where we're
and then we
not,
were concerned of whether or not we could do that. Now I'm thinking, why would we? So you can already see the difference if you move to a 20-year note,
we can. So
right?
hang on, stop for a minute so I can just interject something here. I think what would be really important would be to have this scenario number 9, where we're in a 20-year period, saving all that interest cost for a town where it's almost the amount of what we're bonding, but adjusting the numbers to reflect not getting the waiver just in case we don't. Just so we can go to the town and say, this is the worst case scenario. Does that make sense?
So worst case
I don't know
scenario
if
with
we need
no
it at this
waivers.
point, but I understand what you're saying to
Right.
get to there, but I just, where we are in this process, to me, for what I see the amount of scenario 1 here that we're looking at compared to that scenario 9 of the 20-year bond, and I see how much of a difference it is and how much we save as the town. It's gonna be proportionally the same in your other scenario. When we get closer to that, yes, I agree, but for what I'm looking at here and what we're doing, I don't.
Well, here.
So Peter, without a waiver, worst case scenario is $50 million and change. On these options,
The bond.
yes, our worst case
And what's our-
scenario
and what's our
is
interest?
$49 million. So the numbers we're looking at will already reflect about the highest we're gonna do. So if you're looking at
But I'm looking
about
at-
a $50 million
I'm looking at that,
bond.
And then there's 62 million of interest on a
That's right.
$49 million bond.
Right, so that says to me, we need to not be thinking about a $30 million, a 30-year bond.
Oh, that's a 30. I'm sorry.
Right,
I mixed
that's
up.
what
I
it
want-
says to me is if we
I want-
we
I want
thought
20. Well, I'm thinking 20 is better.
we thought 30 would be better.
To spread
This
it out,
shows that it's not.
try and spread it out.
Yeah, and it doesn't, you end up paying so much more in interest.
Well,
It's significantly,
I agree with Justin.
More.
We understand how
Mhm.
proportionally different when we go with 20 years and we're paying a lot less interest, and that frees up capital for the town.
that is correct.
But here's my concern about not knowing this now and having these big numbers. And the business manager has to work harder, make her work harder, Erica. But my point is, we need to get Phil sending information out to the town
Mhm.
in all of these postcards and flyers and presentations. That the townspeople need to know that. They need to know what the cost of this project is.
Well, we don't know because we don't have a project we're taking to them, Peter. So
Well,
we have, if we have, our worst case scenario is a $30 million, a 30-year note on a almost $50 million project. That's our worst case scenario.
we do have the cost of both projects now in round numbers. We haven't
Right.
selected one of them
Correct.
yet. So I would think it's reasonable to be, I attended the library session, Justin, that Phil gave. Great job, Phil. And that was the question everyone was asking. What does this cost? And you can't take that Scott spreadsheet with the waiver, without the waiver, and just raw numbers. What they want to see is this. And I think this would be helpful, in terms of being able to say the renovate and extend or whatever it's called. I can never get that right. Renovate and
Alteration extension.
thank you. Alteration and extension project is X, and you can see your mill rate increase and your. I want to change this monthly increase to annual because I don't know if anyone will pay their tax. Well, I guess people accrue their tax.
Well, there's annual and there's monthly.
But I would there it is. You're right. I would like them to see that so that they understand what the cost of the project is. I think that's very important. And I want to say this later, and I'd like it to come from this committee. If we're in agreement, or if we're not in agreement, I'm going to bring it up at the full meeting, that we have all this information in our outreach, but not the most important piece of information. What does this project cost? What does it mean to a Willington homeowner? And I would like all of this to be, can we get this onto the school website?
That's what we're here to do, Peter.
Okay, good.
We're here to put together information to put out to them. We've
Good.
given them the cost. I don't want anyone in the public to think we haven't given them the cost. We gave them the cost of the projects. That has been out in public. It is out on our website. We
Well, I
had
asked that question Saturday and they said no.
Of course not. Phil had it in his presentation. Have you not seen this document? It's a 2-page flyer. It has the cost of the it doesn't have a mill rate.
Right.
It has the cost. Our job now
Right.
is to prepare this
Okay.
information to go to them. So
Then we're on the same page.
so the last page of Phil's spreadsheets, you'll see is the this one. At the top, it says option 2A. And so the project cost is $49,675,000. So
2A, whole memorial alteration extension, no waiver.
correct.
And why are we looking at this one?
This is the worst case scenario.
Oh.
So worst case, most expensive, worst case scenario with, and again, these are assumptions that have to be made in order to provide them with an idea of the cost. This is not the final cost. I think that's important for us to convey to people. This is about what your mill rate would be. If the budget and the net to be raised by the town, which is in revenue adjustments and applied fund balance, were the amount in column 1, if the grand list remained flat from what it is in the 2021 grand list, so if there were no changes to the grand list, we had a 99% collection rate on taxes.
We always do.
And we have a 2.5% spending increase year over year. If those assumptions are in place, these are the approximate numbers. So you can
Right,
see.
So stop for a second, just so we can catch up
Sure.
to you, Erica. So I think those are all reasonable assumptions. You disagree, Justin?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Erica.
Yeah, I will argue, I think the grand list will go up, but we have no idea what that will be because of
Just
our
out of
crumbling
curiosity,
foundation
what does
situation
What does Love's hit
this year.
this year?
It'll be on the grand list this year.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think we'll be able to see some of that as crumbling foundations go, but not knowing what that was, we decided to use a flat assumption.
No,
So you'll see.
I think it was well done.
Using the 3 notes, and I'm looking at this, Phil, you have, but this one's a little bit different. This one has more notes. It's remember, it's a longer, this is 2A, so this is with the auditorium. So this is a longer project. Extension, right? So you'll see multiple notes.
Where do you see auditorium?
It's option 2A.
2A is
2A is always the auditorium.
So this has 5 years of notes, a 2.5 million, a 10 million, a 27 million, a 37 million, and a $44 million note. And then the bond, 3 years of a bond. So you can see the mill rate with those bond and note configurations, the mill rate moving from its current 31.27 as high as in the 3rd year of the bond, 47.29. That is correct. And I think it's important what you see in the annual increase in the mill rate, but in the annual increase in taxes based on a $200,000, that is each individual year, that is not compound. So in year 1, a $200,000 house would see a $208 increase. In year 2, a $326. So over 2 years, they'd see, you know, over $530 increase.
And it compounds.
Correct. And so, and then you could see what that might break down monthly to a resident to give them a different sense of what that cost is. But you can see in the last year of the note, 27-28, with the auditorium, that's the year they would move into the school and then build the auditorium. So you see the $500,000 savings in that year 5. And that's why you see some decreases over the prior year, because we're assuming a $500,000 savings on the budget side. Not the bond cost and it's just those costs, but an operating expense. So while we had a 2.5% increase in spending, there's a $500,000 savings to the Board of Ed budget that year.
And the mill rate goes down.
It goes down a
From
little.
39.
Yeah, not much, but you do see a
38.72.
decrease. And then a big swing up from 38.72 to 46.01.
Well, that's a 7.29 mil increase in that year. Which is similar to what we had before, but it was 5 mil. But this is the worst case scenario.
This is the
with
worst
the
case
extend and
scenario.
renovate thing.
Yes.
Okay.
And again, these numbers were used with a 30-year bond.
It's very clear to me.
Can we go back, Peter, for comparison's sake, to look at the first page of this?
Of course.
If we had a waiver, if the project,
So
I won't.
So that's new school.
What I'll say is if the
with waiver.
if the project cost to the town was $28,700,000 as opposed to $49 million, you can see in that first jump, that's the first highlighted bond year over the left, you can see bond year 1. That's when you see the first big jump from 36.42 mils to 40.16.
Bond year 1.
Yes.
And that's a 3.74 mil increase.
Yeah, but that's
year.
a considerable.
Yeah, that's
less.
for someone with a
It's still a lot.
$200,000 house, they're going up almost $800 that year.
But from going to a 40 mils to 47 mils on our worst case scenario. I mean, so the difference between a $28 million project and a $49 million project.
Hold up, what we should really be looking at is the new school with no waiver.
You want to look at about what that cost would be. Okay, so that cost.
Hold on a second, Eric.
But I want to.
I know you know all of this, but I'm catching up with you. I think the two relevant slides for us that will help us with our outreach to the townspeople and help everyone understand this is option 1A, new school with no, well, I guess it should, yeah, option 1. The auditorium confuses me, so is option 2.
Option 2 is all school.
Where is the?
What do you want to look at?
We already saw. We just looked at the worst case scenario with the alteration extension with auditorium. Where is the new school with auditorium? No waiver.
So that would be approximately 40.
Where's that in these sheets?
Hold on, I'm telling you what the cost would be. Approximately $43 million.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So.
Pardon?
Third one.
Third one in. Thank you. Oh, option 1A.
So $43.4 million.
1A is the auditorium with no waiver. Yeah.
So that's 43 million, and I think you just say that, Erica.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So to me, these are our two, what we want to put on the town website, what we want to share in our presentations, and know that, you know, there are other opportunities, but that these are the worst case scenarios for both. Does that make sense? I mean, it makes sense to me.
No, I think we let them know what here you have multiple options. No auditorium at this cost. This is about what it would cost you for the least expensive option. Because for some people, the school and the auditorium are going to be what makes them make their choice. I think that's a reality. For some people, the dollar amount to their pocket is going to be what makes the difference. Right?
We want to get that feedback. So,
right. So you give them.
Could we have the two? I hate using keep using the word worst case scenario, but I don't know a better way of saying it. So let's say we have those, and then can we have the deducts? Okay, the auditorium comes out. Now it's X in each scenario.
I don't think that matters.
I don't
for
think
you
it
guys.
does.
Doesn't matter?
I think it's
No.
the final project cost of the town.
I just shared a
You know what I'm trying to say, Phil?
Yeah, I do. I think what's confusing is because when we worked with the financial advisor, we ended up asking for bond information based upon a dollar amount, and it happened to be a certain project, but we weren't going by project, we were just going by dollar amount. So what I just shared with you, Erica, and I'm not in this meeting, so I'm trying, that's why I couldn't share myself. I just lined up, I took the same spreadsheets that you're looking at just for perspective, because I think what's important is that, we thought you buy a car, if you're financed for 48 months, your payments are larger, right? We thought you financed for 72 months, your payments would shrink. We didn't see that.
It went the other way.
Correct.
I don't get it,
So,
but that's okay.
So what I just did is I just made one tab in just for simplicity called the taxes first year, and didn't put a project name to it. Put the number of years for the bond and the project cost. The project cost aligns to something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's, I don't know if you see it yet.
I do.
But if you want to share that, I don't know if that would help, because it doesn't have necessarily the mill rate on it, but you can make the association like 20-year bond for 28 million. Your first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, $208, $326, $496, $748, $136, $134. And it's, you can look right down the rows and go, okay, the 30-year bond for $43 million has $1,000 jump for a $200,000 house, assessed house. So I don't know if that's
No, I think, well, now
I just put them side by
You
side.
can see it side by side. So I'm going to pull that up.
I'm just worried about people having to leaf through all these
That's
why
and
Phil's
getting
trying
confused while you're giving the presentation, Phil.
I think
when you see this, I think it'll help a little bit.
I agree with you. I think what we have to do is now pare this down to stop looking at 30-year options, because if the 30-year options,
But we need to decide that, right?
that's what you guys need to
That's
decide.
what we're here to decide. I'm
Your
here to say to you,
recommendation.
Yes.
I don't see how we continue looking at 30-year,
Okay,
but
should I make a motion to that effect?
You
No.
can't hear.
no,
What's the time here? Time frame
No.
here? 6:09.
no,
We
we don't.
You just make a recommendation
Okay.
out of this group.
Okay, so yeah,
Oh, no, I don't want to.
I recommend we delete the 30-year option and stick with 20. But then I want to see that for.
Now we know we need to get some more.
Right,
So
we need
what
We
to-
kind of have it, right? I mean.
you only have
No,
the
we
30
only
year.
have the 30. The numbers are going to be very different.
Oh, these are 30-year numbers.
Of course,
in this.
yeah, that's what we got, and then we
Oh.
went back and said,
How
I
much
took a
work
look
is
at
it gonna be
this,
to do all that.
and
What?
I think she would do it for us if
Yeah.
we're specific now.
this is coming from our financial advisor.
Oh, okay, good.
So the question for you is then, you have 3 other amounts that are real numbers tied to projects. What do you want them for? You have a 20-year bond chart right now for 28 million. The 3 other amounts you don't have. And again, we were just simply trying to have incremental, so you can see the differences. You have 49 million, 43 million, and 36 million. They're about 6 million.
And those gradations, Phil, are the 36 million is.
Are the different projects.
Different projects.
So if you just want to see, hey, what's the biggest jump? And so, yeah, this is what I'm looking at here. So this 28 million ties to a project, right? Each of those numbers does. So but when we just look at the 20 million, we know that it's not what we thought the car financing would be. This is a better picture for taxpayers. You see that $1,000 jump in there. I think it's a little more gradual. and then you're not paying for an additional 10 years. You're not getting hit on your taxes for an additional 10 years. So the question to you is now,
Thanks.
You're welcome.
right?
Sorry, I'm doing two computers.
Now you have this 20-year bond information, and this is only the first few years. You have more numbers there for 28 million. This is where I think we have to be reasonable with what we ask her, because I think she can just adjust these numbers because she did them for 30 and put in 20 and it'll run the tables for her. So do you want, I mean, we could ask for all, she might say no.
Right.
But if she says yes, you get them all. But what's your priority? The high end, or do you want to do something in the middle?
I think the reasonable is the lowest end and the highest end. You know, if she says she can't do them all, we've got the lowest and in the highest, gives you an idea. Remember, these aren't, and again, which is why I say it's important for us to share with residents that these are not concrete numbers.
And ultimately, the full committee is going to pick one of the two projects and everything gets recrunched.
Correct.
Right? Which that's going to be highly confusing to people. Phil, everyone I sat next to in the presentation side of the library thought they're going to the referendum to pick which project the town wants to do. I don't know how this like evolved, but it's amazing to me how many people I run into that say that. But that said, I think Scott's right. Even though he's not here to hear it. I think we should have the full cost with no waiver for 20 years for each scenario.
So if she'll give us,
So that's 30.
if she will,
Because we're at the beginning point right now.
you do it for 36.
Is what I'm
43,
thinking,
49,
Justin.
36, 43,
and
And
49.
then depending on the reactions,
42, and 49.
and how do you know what number you're on?
You're saying 43 because it's
Oh,
a rounded up.
Yeah.
This is my opinion, okay? You guys can chime in, because you're on the committee. But Scott always said that, Phil always said that, you know, we should look at the no waiver. The only thing that I'm confused about is this auditorium. That is highly confusing to me, and I'm increasingly, this is just personally saying this, disenchanted with it because it seems to be mucking everything up.
So
Just look at the dollar amount then.
Right.
Don't worry about the
Don't worry.
project right now.
if our total project cost, forget about what you're getting for it, is $36 million.
But
This is
does
what
that
it would
include the
cost.
auditorium?
Well, it depends. So
Doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter. 36.
Oh, I see, it's just a figure.
It's a
Okay.
figure.
Crazy money, and we're like, oh my gosh. that was
How far
exactly-
can we go
Right.
from where we started?
'Cause the
Okay,
reality is the worst.
okay,
With no
okay. It's a whole
waivers,
different way of
right.
looking at it. I'm kind of stuck in the, you know, I have to take my school building committee hat off, I guess, and just think like.
A little bit, Peter, but
Okay.
the project,
I'm with you.
I know, but the project costs, if we have no waivers, so the only known numbers we have are gonna cost to the town based on these figures, between 36 million and 50 million. The auditorium on a new school and hall school without an auditorium are with less than $1 million difference, about $1 million difference. So they're 43.3 and 42.5, right? So they're pretty equal in cost if you have an auditorium on a new school and no auditorium. So we're looking at a range borne to the taxpayers at most between 36 million and 50 million. But we hope to get that down to between 28 million and 42 million with a waiver.
But this just gives us a sense of what the financial impact is
If we didn't get the waiver.
and what the
If we don't get the
tolerance
waivers.
and what the tolerance of the community is for this, which could help the committee
But I don't,
in evaluating the options.
I'm gonna tell you, I feel strongly that we put information out regarding the waiver, that we need to not eliminate that from our discussion. So that the project
Of course.
that we feel like we
That we're
should be
doing our
eligible
due
and we will be
diligence and we're
fighting
trying to
for,
get the waiver.
could bring us down to at least 28 million and change whatever that is. So I would say between the 28 million and the 50 million is our range, right? So every number fits in there.
So 50 million would be our worst case scenario.
It is our worst case
28 million
scenario.
would be our best case scenario.
Correct.
I just rearranged
Yeah.
them and basically threw out the 30 or 28 million to show that we now know that doesn't make sense, right? So now you would do a 20-year, we would just put these all into 20 years and say, okay, we want 36 million now. What does a 20-year bond look like? We want 43 million. What's a 20-year bond look like? And then I can take these and just put them side by side. Then we can get a sense of, hey, what in the first 6 years, what does it look like? If she says no, or I'm going to charge you for it, it might be worth it. If you were going to prioritize.
I apologize for jumping ahead.
It's okay.
What I find incredibly, this makes sense to me in terms of getting a sense of what the cost impact is on the town and our end of it. But you can't put this on a postcard. You can't put this on. This doesn't reflect what we would do.
You can, but it's going to be simplified into something like this. I can't change tabs.
Because
which computer am I
click option
using?
1 year.
Because we don't want people assuming the low end or the high end.
Correct.
Right?
You would agree. If you're going to put this out eventually to people for a project, you're going to put whichever one project you're doing is correct. So you're going to put out and you're going to say, look at, okay, we're doing a new school on a new site where here's the waiver if we get the waiver, and here's if we don't get the waiver. And you're just putting those two numbers on there because this is the project the SBC says. And the impact, mill rate typically doesn't mean a lot to people. What means a lot to people is we say this. If you have an assessed house at $200,000, in your first year, your taxes are going to go up.
I agree.
And then, you know, the annual and then the monthly. I think it's just an easy way to get the information without putting in the total cost of the project note with the bonds. That's just for us. It's our internal knowledge.
It's the right side of the spreadsheet that people want to see. I think a lot of, I'm from New Jersey, so the mill rate was always bizarre to me, but I've noticed a lot of people in town like knowing that. So I
would say include that.
I would share it. I would include the mill rate information.
And here's what it means: $208.
Right.
So your job is you have to make a recommendation, and it doesn't even have to go through the vote committee. I think really you just have to tell me, Erica,
and we'll reach
what
out
do you
to
want from the financial advisor? Do you want? Can you go back to that first tab, Erica?
You want what we want.
If she can't get all of those numbers for you, do you want to pay for it if she charges us? We have that first column. Do you want B, C, and D in all three of those numbers in 20-year bonds? So you can just see the equal, it's about equal spacing. It's about 6 million between each.
It shouldn't be hard for her to do all of it.
I would think so.
Right.
But I'm not doing her job, so I don't know.
Let's ask for it all.
Okay. All right, so we'll ask her for these four.
Yep.
Yeah.
20
At
years.
20 years.
Justin, that makes sense to you?
I mean, if she's willing to do it, yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, I think you do your work. If can't, the worst.
Do the
best,
49 million.
you know,
If it's too much, then then do the low end
You
and the
can
high
get a
end.
sense of what's in the middle.
Justin,
What's that?
do the low end and the high end if we're
Right,
limited to.
Okay.
At the same time, you know, I worry we put up all of these numbers, they're confusing, and then we're trying to put up the real number at the very end saying this is what we came up with. And that doesn't match anything that we've been doing.
Right. I agree with you on that. And
That's troubling. I agree with you.
A lot of this is a lot of information, right? And this is part of our complexity of still having two choices at this point, because we've made a commitment to that, and not having a firm commitment on an auditorium for those, right? So because we put ourselves in the world of 4 options, there's a lot of numbers floating around. But I think it's important to share to people, the impact could be as little as this and as much as this.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a range in there somewhere. And that, you know, maybe if
We have 10 minutes.
some revenue fairy drops in our lap, all of these numbers change and the numbers go down. Wouldn't that be fantastic? But with what we know today and the assumptions that we've made, this is what we would anticipate it costing the taxpayer.
Okay.
So I'll go back and
we're agreed on this. I had some other takeaways from the Saturday meeting that I thought would be useful for us. The first one was overall cost, and that I think we're getting a handle on the range, certainly. But you're right, Erica. We have we have to decide as a committee ultimately, and that's going to give us the. Okay. The other thing that came up in that meeting were people asking questions about the costs that are not clear. The bonding cost doesn't go into the cost of the project, and I think that was confusing to people. These issues I wrote down about water and power not being part of the cost. I'm wondering if we can get rough numbers like this for those costs and have footnotes on underneath our bonding costs, so people have a sense of what these other costs are.
So
good questions.
I think they're good questions, Peter, but the question about the water is, if we brought water in, that's not what our project is to do, and we don't know that that's needed. Built into our project cost is water from wells on the site.
So that's a given. What Scott has included a sufficient.
Well, because we don't have public
budget.
water.
I understand.
So that's, he would use what we have, and without public water, it's those numbers are predicated upon wells, and I would assume multiple wells. Do you know the answer to how many?
No.
Okay. But built on getting water from the site, not from a public water source. So I think that's a bigger conversation than the school building committee to decide if we're going to bring water and from where and at what cost. That is a much greater conversation.
Well, we need to understand what's in the project, and if that's in there, then we don't have to worry about it in my mind. But people are asking the questions publicly, and I don't want there to be confusion. Same with power. Is our three-phase power coming to that site included in Scott's project cost?
I think it's included. We'll ask him tonight. I believe it's included in the cost, but it's not reimbursable. Reimbursable begins at the site.
I'll save these questions for Scott. I don't want to bog us down now. The other questions I was hearing was, we're entering into bonding this project, and townspeople are trying to get a sense of where are we with our other bonding commitments. When will the library be paid for? I heard it for asked, for example, and
2027.
Yeah. So I get it. People
intimately familiar with the CIP plan.
I get it. People think in terms of like their home budget. You know, well, if I didn't pay off my car yet, you know. So I think that would be good information to have, as well as somebody asked me this. We entered into that Siemens contract.
That was
for both schools.
I want to say that's 17 years.
If we break that contract, what's the financial impact on the town?
I don't know.
And I certainly didn't know. I asked my wife, and she muttered something about something.
What do you mean if we broke the contract?
I don't know.
Well, if the buildings are no longer there, what does that mean?
You're still paying on
still paying your contract.
Right. What is that? What does that cost?
What are we, year 9 of 17?
I think all. Something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
there's a dollar amount to
yeah. So like some of these things, I think people need a sense of. You know,
but that would remain in there in the operating budget of the school. That's still in their operating budget.
2.5%.
Well, yes. That because the cost is in the operating budget of the schools. So the 2.5% is an assumed increase in the overall budget. And so those figures would still be included in their operating costs.
Okay.
So they're still there.
And I would think the library bond is in the impact of a taxpayer when it's paid off.
Yes.
Is in the tens. Like you might see an impact on your taxes of $40.
I don't think CIP,
it's significant.
but I think each year we're somewhere around $150,000 is what we're paying on that bond. It's not much at all.
I vaguely remember a CIP, but I think people like to have a sense of what our commitments are before we take on this kind of commitment.
So that's all in the regular budget, and those numbers are out there. We can share that, but it's not part of this project cost. And I think it's important while we talk about it, it's not included in the project cost. Like there was, people are questioning whether and so making sure that the full scope of what our debt service is multiple things, including the library bond, and this would be added to that debt service.
Right, and I think people want a sense of just what that is.
Sure, you could pull out a CIP plan and be able to share that information.
Okay.
But I think we don't share it as a matter of
So our
this discussion, simply because it's not the school building committee project.
not per se. So our big achievement is we went from 30 years to 20 years, and we understand our expenditures report. And so that means that all of this is going to change, right?
Yeah.
And then at some point, we would have a project selected on our timeline.
February 1st.
Or,
All right, can I make a motion to adjourn?
you have to.
Yeah.
Second,
Right.
6:27. You have to start the new meeting. I'm
You're
sorry.
in favor. You're
Thank
in-
you,
Yes.
Justin. Thank you,
Yes.
Erica. Thank you,
Yes.
Phil.
Thank you.